you. It is my very great honour to second this bill and commend it to the House, and I'm very grateful to hear from the Leader that Minister Humphreys is supportive of the bill, and thank you, Minister, for being here today. And thank you, Leader, for bringing this forward and for being so tenacious as a Minister and also as a Leader, and for inviting me to be part of it. To Stephen, I say a very happy birthday. I have no doubt that today is a mixture of emotions, cherishing of his memory, and the sadness of the days that weren't lived with him. But to Martin and Caroline, and to all of you that are here, but especially to Martin and Caroline, the organisation Proud to Parent lists these concepts amongst the definition of parenthood and parenting, and includes meeting basic needs, protection, love and leading. And I want to say to you today, well done on being the most fantastic parents to Stephen, for protecting him and making sure that his life, short as it was the one of great significance, for loving him and leading him, for so many other parents to have the significance of their babies recognised. Well done, Mummy and Daddy. Stephen, I'm sure will be very proud of you in the universe today. Pregnancy loss at any stage can be a very difficult experience for a couple. Academic studies by psychologists have shown a significant depression and anxiety in the first month following early pregnancy loss in women. Partners are shown also to display depression and anxiety, albeit generally at a slightly lower level. There is also evidence of post-traumatic stress symptoms relating to early pregnancy loss. The American Psychological Association found that while the tragedy of miscarriage was traditionally private, an event grieved largely by the mother, healthcare professionals have seen that these women have great sadness, and that it would grow less over time, especially following a successful pregnancy. That was the thinking. But the research suggests that many women mourn for much longer than expected, even after the birth of a healthy child, although the range and severity of symptoms may vary. That is also true for men, and the studies have shown them to grieve over miscarriage, and what was once thought is no longer the academic and the professionally held view. You know, because miscarriage is so common, and that 1 in 4, I would say some of the statistics are, pregnancies end in miscarriage, the impact of miscarriage is often underestimated. But miscarriage is a traumatic loss, not only of the pregnancy, but of the woman's sense of herself, her hopes, her dreams of a future. She has lost her reproductive story, and all of that has to be grieved. The tragedy of miscarriage has traditionally been private, but it is right that we talk about it, that we bring it out into the public, that we afford women and men the opportunity to mourn for the much longed for child, and that they get the opportunity to grieve, and that grief is publicly recognised and publicly supported. Clinical psychologists have found that a woman who has had a miscarriage is at a risk of depression and anxiety. Even after having a healthy child, women who miscarry have a greater possibility of postpartum depression. The misunderstandings of miscarriage is that a woman will experience less grief once she has a baby, if she has lost the baby early in pregnancy. But research has proven that that's not the case. You know, that the length of gestation has no bearing on the intensity of grief. A woman who has lost a baby at 11 weeks may be as distraught as a woman who has lost a baby at 20 weeks. And so while medical experiences may vary, and the emphasis and meaning of a pregnancy may vary, but labelling this a traumatic loss and recognising it as a traumatic loss is something that will validate that experience of grief. And that's exactly what this bill does. It validates the loss that has occurred, that life existed, that was significant to the person whose life and circumstances that was there and who longed for this child. Recognising the life is also recognising the loss to those who grieve. Society, in an effort to be helpful, can be very dismissive of loss. Following the sharing of a news of miscarriage, people can say, it wasn't meant to be, what's before you won't pass you, that hated saying of my own personally. You can try again. Well-meaning, I'm sure, but it's a thoughtless implication that the baby that was due and the grief that is associated with that loss is not as significant as it is. The statement and action of this bill was brought about by the determination of Caroline and Martin that Stephen was and is significant, and that maybe as we move forward as a society, having a certificate of life and a state mechanism for the recognition of that grief, we will review how we treat miscarriage and respect the grief of parents. In many cases, the early pregnancy loss, there is no body to hold, no remains to bury, no place to go with the loss. And this bill gives a place to go and a place of recognition. On Good Friday in 2008, 4 days earlier than I was supposed to do a pregnancy test, I woke up in the middle of the night having dreamt that I was pregnant. I ran into the bathroom and did a pregnancy test. I had a pile of about 10 of them waiting to be used. I wasn't in my first IVF cycle, but I knew from the outset that this one was different. My body felt different. The test was very clearly positive. I did it again to be sure that I wasn't imagining it and I wasn't still dreaming, and it was still positive. And my poor husband, my poor Dave, was woken up to me shrieking, and the two of us hugged and cried and celebrated that after 7 years of marriage and trying, we were finally pregnant. We were suddenly transformed into a family. At that very early stage, Dave made me tea, he brought me breakfast in bed, he treated me and my wonderful body that was now holding our baby with such tenderness and love. We drove into my parents to tell them that all was great and they were going to finally have a grandchild. We rang my stepchildren to tell them they were going to have a little brother or sister. Everybody was delighted. That weekend, Dave and I were in Tesco's with my mother, and when we came to the baby aisle, an aisle that I studiously avoided for years, he stood at the top of it and proudly invited me to walk down the aisle, and I did. And I looked at the nappies and I looked at all the bits and pieces, even picked up a thing of Sood cream and thought, oh, I'll have that and I'll have all of these things. We drove out to Mama's and Papa's. We bought a baby grow, a nameplate for the door of the room that was going to be the nursery. I even started crocheting booties. We speculated on names, on birth, on the celebrations of our baby's life, on schools, on a whole lifetime, a whole life. We imagined our first Christmas, the Christmas decorations, Santa, visits to Santa. We planned a whole life. In the weeks that followed, what started out as blood spotting ended up in a full miscarriage. That was the first of 5 such losses over the next few years. Later that year, a much longer pregnancy ended on the 29th of December. We still have the scans. I can still hear the sounds of the heartbeat. That new year of 2008 going into 2009, we locked ourselves away. Our best friends, John and Melissa, came and hung groceries on the door of our house so that we could lock ourselves away and grieve. Every year on the 29th of December, we go to my grandparents' grave and we lay a wreath on their grave in memory of those lives we lived for such a short time and the lives that we lost. They are the members of our family, and they're in my heart and David's heart. I pinch myself every day for the joy of the baby that was born via the wonderful woman who was prepared to be our surrogate and the clinic that cherished our journey to holding our baby. We celebrate her every day, and while as a family we fully live and love her together, but that doesn't diminish our need to memorialise our loved ones that were lost. And so I commend this bill to the House. I am seeking the support of this House, but it's clear it's going to be unanimous, and that we ensure that for those families who wish to, that they have the opportunity to have that lifetime that was lived for however long that pregnancy was, that they have that opportunity to have that recognition of those who are remembered and those who are cherished, and that we respect their right to grieve. And so I commend the bill to the House, and I thank you most sincerely.